Alright, welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video, I'm going to compare the Alberta cities of Red Deer and Lethbridge. This was actually an idea that I got from someone who had commented on another one of my videos. And I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. Lethbridge and Red Deer have been vying for the third largest city in Alberta spot for quite a while. They've been close to the same size for a while, although right now Red Deer is a little bit bigger. The estimated 2024 population of Red Deer is about 118,000, and the estimated population for Lethbridge is about 109,000. And so I came up with a list of 10 different categories, and in each of these categories I'm going to pick which city is better. Although I have allowed for ties, because in some of these categories I can't really make my mind up whether one is better than the other. And then after going through these 10 categories, I'll tell you in my opinion which city I think is better. And I'm just going to jump right into the comparison. So the first category on my list is general topography. And what I mean by that is just the general area around these two cities. But when I was comparing Lethbridge and Red Deer, it didn't seem like there was a clear winner. So Red Deer is located in the parkland region of Alberta. This area has a lot more vegetation and greenery than Lethbridge. Red Deer has a beautiful lush river valley with the Red Deer River flowing through it. And the general topography around Red Deer is just very dynamic as well. It has a ton of rolling hills. In fact, in the area of Red Deer, you have the Canyon Ski Resort, which is built on a massive hill. And this is actually the largest non-mountain ski resort in Alberta. And when you add in the beautiful rolling hills and the river valley, I definitely think that Red Deer has a beautiful topography. Now, Lethbridge is located in the general Badlands area of the province, and this area is a lot more desert-like. It's not nearly as green, but it has this sort of Wild West vibe to it, which I really enjoy. It also has a very epic river valley running through the city, the Old Man River Valley. And compared to Red Deer, the river valley area in Lethbridge is way more epic. You really notice this as you're driving into Lethbridge from Calgary, for example, and I just find the general topography around Lethbridge to be a lot more epic and exciting than the area around Red Deer, although it's not as green. And so in this category, I'm just going to declare a draw. I think that both cities have equally interesting topographies, and one city isn't a clear winner above the other. All right, the next category on the list is general weather, and I'm not going to throw too much information at you. I'm just going to give you a basic rundown of each of these cities' general weather patterns. And of course, Lethbridge is located in the Badlands area of the province, and when you compare it to Red Deer, it's definitely a lot warmer in general, and this is not only in the summer but the winter as well. Lethbridge also gets a lot less precipitation than Red Deer. As I mentioned, it's not as green as the Red Deer area, and that's definitely true for most of the surrounding area. Another major component of Lethbridge weather is the wind. People that move to Lethbridge say that the wind in that city is worse than anything they've ever experienced. And then when you're talking about Red Deer, it gets a lot more precipitation than Lethbridge. It's definitely a more lush green area. And of course, Red Deer is a little bit colder in the winter and a little bit cooler in the summer when you compare it to Lethbridge. And of course, it's a lot less windy in Red Deer than it is in Lethbridge. Personally, I don't think that one city has better weather than the other. I'm not a big fan of the summer heat, and so the fact that it gets considerably warmer in Lethbridge in the summer compared to Red Deer is not a big bonus for me. I also find the wind to be super annoying, and so the fact that Lethbridge is extremely windy isn't a major plus for me either. And then Lethbridge is pretty dry. You'll notice that it's not as green as other areas of the province, especially the area around Red Deer. And like many people, I'm a fan of green space, and of course you need rain to create green spaces, and the area around Lethbridge is just a lot more arid and desert-like. I personally like the weather around Red Deer better than Lethbridge, although I know a lot of people prefer the general warmth in Lethbridge over Red Deer. And so again, in this category, I think the two cities are roughly tied, and there's not really a clear winner. Okay, the next category on this list is access to goods and services, and this is the first category where I think there's a clear winner. Red Deer is definitely closer in general to goods and services than Lethbridge is. Now, in terms of the cities themselves, both cities have a decent amount of services and amenities within the city limits. Red Deer is known for having more big box stores. Lethbridge has a lot more unique and mom and pop shops. The general hospital is a bit bigger in Red Deer compared to Lethbridge, although it's a lot busier. But the two cities are fairly comparable when you're talking about in-city amenities. However, Lethbridge is relatively isolated. I mean, the closest major city is Calgary, and that's about 2 hours and 15 minutes away. Whereas Red Deer is pretty much right in the middle of Edmonton and Calgary. Red Deer to Edmonton is about 1 hour and 43 minutes, and Red Deer to Calgary is about 1.5 hours. And when I'm talking about access to goods and services, yes, I'm largely talking about access to Edmonton and Calgary. Edmonton and Calgary are obviously the biggest cities in Alberta and some of the biggest cities in Canada. And both Edmonton and Calgary just have a ton of goods, services, and amenities. I'm talking talking about everything from fine dining to shopping to doctors, lawyers, specialists, as well as professional sports teams and major attractions. I mean, not only is Red Deer a lot closer to Edmonton and Calgary, but it's also about 25 minutes away from the most popular lake in the province, which is Sylvan Lake, which also has a beautiful town beside it, by the way. Now, Lethbridge is a lot closer to the US border, so I guess that would be useful to people who frequently drive to the US from Alberta, but I don't think there's really any contest. When you're talking about overall access to goods and services, Red Deer is the clear winner in this category. Okay, the next category on my list is public transit, and you'll be happy to know that if you're moving to either of these two cities, they each have a very healthy transit system. And of course, these cities are relatively small, so of course you won't find a subway system or LRT, but each of these two cities has a fleet of buses that will take you throughout the city. And in this category, I think that Red Deer is the winner, but only slightly. I also find that there's a little bit more general coverage with its transit system. And so some of that has to do with the layout of Red Deer itself, but I think that the general transit system in Red Deer lets people access goods and services a little bit more efficiently than it does in Lethbridge. And although both cities are large enough to have rush hours during peak hours, I find that there can be particular delays going from the west side to the east side of Lethbridge. These two sides of the city are separated by the Old Man River Valley, which is really more of a canyon or a gorge cutting through the city. And I just find that this area in the middle can get a little bit busier than you might expect. And I just find that the transit system in Red Deer offers more availability and general coverage of the area of the city. And while both cities have really decent transit systems in general, I think that the transit system is a bit better in Red Deer, and you'll find that you can access goods and services a little bit better on the buses in that city. And so in this category, Red Deer is the winner. Okay, the number 5 category on my list is post-secondary institutions, and in this category, Lethbridge is the clear winner, and that's because of the University of Lethbridge. Now, I'll just hop over to Red Deer for a second. It does have some major post-secondary institutions. I mean, Red Deer Polytechnic in particular has a really good track record of providing marketable degrees and diplomas to its students. But when it comes to post-secondary institutions and you're comparing the two cities, Lethbridge is the clear winner. And of course, Lethbridge has a bunch of smaller post-secondary schools, such as Reeves College, which has campuses across the province. But the University of Lethbridge in particular is one of Canada's top-rated universities and one of the top research institutions in the country. And honestly, given just the general size of Lethbridge, having the University of Lethbridge within its city limits is a big deal. This is not only a major university for students to get trained at, but they also just do a ton of general research. The University of Lethbridge is also a massive employer in the city, and they're also a promoter of arts and culture, as universities are in different cities and towns. And there is something epic about the University of Lethbridge. I love the architecture itself. It sort of blends in with the prairie, but it's also situated right on the edge of the massive Old Man River Valley in that gorge that cuts through the middle of the city. And I just personally think that the University of Lethbridge has a bit of an epic vibe to it, just given its general surroundings. And I'm not disparaging any of those other schools at all. They are great schools and they have a good track record for getting people trained and employed. But when you're talking about the influence and the significance of the University of Lethbridge, I think that Lethbridge is the clear winner in this category. Okay, next up on the list is general walkability. How are these two cities for walking around and taking in the sights? But when I'm thinking about Lethbridge and Red Deer, I don't think there's a clear winner in this category, and I'd have to declare a tie. First off, Red Deer is just a lot more lush and green than Lethbridge. It has a beautiful river valley cutting through the middle of the city, and this river valley area is surrounded by some very lush and green park space. I mean, Red Deer has over 100 kilometers of multi-use recreational trails, and it just has beautiful parks around the river valley. I'm thinking about the wonderful Bower Ponds area. Like I mentioned previously, the Red Deer area also has the Canyon Ski Resort, which is a popular area in both the winter and the summer. It also has the Gates Lake Nature Sanctuary, which is Alberta's oldest federal migratory bird sanctuary. And Red Deer just has a massive swath of green space cutting right through the city, and then a bunch of other beautiful parks throughout the city. And when you're talking about the central downtown business district in Red Deer, I find it to be slightly more vibrant than Lethbridge. And Red Deer is still a small city, and so you won't find a bunch of really cool eclectic neighborhoods like you'll find in Montreal, for example. But the downtown core is really decent, and you'll find some excellent options for dining and shopping. Now, Lethbridge, on the other hand, is not as lush and green, but I definitely find it just as beautiful and walkable as Red Deer. And of course, Lethbridge is in the Badlands area of the province, and I've always just loved walking around this area. It is a bit dry, but it's always just had this sort of epic desert Wild West vibe to me. And honestly, you'll find some really epic hiking around Lethbridge and even within the city limits. And apart from the River Valley area, Lethbridge also has the beautiful Henderson Lake as well as the Nikayuko Japanese Gardens, which are very popular areas for walking around. In terms of the downtown central business district in Lethbridge, I enjoy walking around this area, but I don't think it's quite as vibrant or busy as the downtown in Red Deer. Again, I think this has really changed. About 10 years ago, I would have considered Lethbridge to have a more bustling and vibrant downtown. And it does have a ton of great options for shopping and dining, but I just find that in general, especially over the past few years, Red Deer's downtown is a bit more vibrant. But Lethbridge and Red Deer are both very interesting and walkable, and in this category, I'd have to declare a tie. I think they're about the same. All right, the next category on my list is sports. I'm talking about major sports teams and general sports culture. And in this category, I think that Red Deer is the winner. Now, in general, when you're comparing Red Deer and Lethbridge, Red Deer is a lot more blue collar, and I think in general, they're into sports a bit more than they are in Lethbridge. Whereas Lethbridge is a lot more white collar and artistic, largely due to the influence of the university, but that doesn't paint the whole picture. But I just find that in general, Red Deer is a lot more into sports in general than they are in Lethbridge. When you're talking about the two cities' biggest teams, Red Deer has the Red Deer Rebels, who play in the Western Hockey League, and then Lethbridge has the Lethbridge Hurricanes, which play in the same league. Both teams have had roughly the same amount of success, but I find that in general, across Alberta, the Red Deer Rebels have a lot more support, and they're just the more popular team overall. Red Deer also has a much better major sports complex. The PV Mart Centrium is a lot newer, bigger, and nicer than the NMAX Center in Lethbridge, which is their major sports complex. I also think that Red Deer has a better assortment of smaller sports facilities around the city than Lethbridge does. And again, I just think that in general, there's a stronger sports culture in Red Deer compared to Lethbridge. Of course, Lethbridge has fantastic sporting and recreation facilities as well, but in this category, I think that Red Deer is the winner. Okay, the next category on my list is general art scene, and in this category, I think that Lethbridge is the clear winner. Like I mentioned, Red Deer is a bit more conservative blue collar, and Lethbridge is a bit more artistic, liberal white collar. And of course, I'm speaking in generalities, and that's not always true, but generally this is true, and I think most people in Alberta would agree. And when you're talking about Lethbridge, I think a lot of their art scene is supported by the University of Lethbridge. Obviously, young people tend to be into supporting the arts a little bit more, but it doesn't end with the university. I mean, Lethbridge has the Southern Alberta Art Gallery, which has an excellent reputation, and so does the Allied Arts Council of Alberta. They do a ton of things to promote different creative arts, not only in the area of Lethbridge, but throughout Southern Alberta as well. The New West Theatre in Lethbridge has been known to put on excellent theatre productions, and Lethbridge also has its very own symphony, which has a fantastic reputation as well. And Lethbridge just has a bit more of an artistic, eclectic vibe than Red Deer does. Of course, Red Deer has their own symphony orchestra, the Festival Hall, Red Deer Memorial Center. Red Deer does have a thriving art scene, and they put on a variety of shows, and throughout the year, you're going to find a ton of quality events as well as festivals. But I definitely think that the art scene is better in Lethbridge overall compared to Red Deer, and so in this category, I think that Lethbridge is the winner. All right, the next category on my list is general crime and social disorder, and unfortunately, both Red Deer and Lethbridge have significantly higher crime rates when you're talking about Alberta or even compared to the rest of Canada. But in this category, I would have to say Lethbridge is the winner because its crime rates are not quite as bad as Red Deer. Recent analysis using the Crime Severity Index, which assigns each town or city a number, had Red Deer at 176.4 and Lethbridge at 148.9 on the Crime Severity Index. And to give you something to compare that to, the Alberta average overall was about 101.36 on the Crime Severity Index scale. So both Red Deer and Lethbridge are considerably higher than the Alberta average, which itself is a little bit higher than the Canadian average. And I mean, Lethbridge has also been given the nickname Methbridge for the meth problem in that city, although that problem definitely exists in Red Deer as well. And just in my opinion, having been in these cities quite a bit, I definitely think that Red Deer has a little bit more visible and noticeable social disorder than Lethbridge. And this is only slightly. I mean, Lethbridge definitely has quite a bit of crime as well, but I find that Lethbridge has a bit more of a peaceful, laid-back vibe, and maybe that's influencing my decision in this category. But when you're looking at official crime numbers, it is clear that Red Deer does have more crime than Lethbridge. And based on my experiences, it does have a bit more open social disorder, although many people will disagree. But in this category, I would have to declare Lethbridge the winner because it does statistically have less overall crime, and in my opinion, it definitely has a more peaceful vibe than Red Deer. Okay, and the last category on my list is housing and rental prices. So what are you going to pay to live in these two cities? And in this category, it's actually a tie. And the reason for this is the fact that properties are more expensive in Lethbridge compared to Red Deer, but Red Deer actually has cheaper rentals. And of course, many people are looking to buy and many people are looking to rent. And here are some specific numbers. And of course, these are just averages, but the average home in Lethbridge is about $365,000 and the average home in Red Deer is about $349,000. And then when you're talking about rentals, again, these are just averages. The median rental in Red Deer is about $1,555 and the median rental in Lethbridge is about $1,375. And with cheaper rentals in Lethbridge and cheaper properties in Red Deer, I'm going to have to declare a tie in this category. And so that brings me to the end of the list. And of course, at the beginning of the video, I said that I would declare my winner for what I thought was the better city out of Lethbridge and Red Deer. But I'm not really able to do that because I think that these two cities are pretty neck and neck and there's no clear winner. And as I went through these 10 categories that I came up with and compared the two cities, in 4 of the categories, it was a tie. In 3 of the categories, Red Deer was the winner. And then in the other 3 categories, Lethbridge was the winner. And so based on my own personal opinions and analysis, I would have to declare a tie between the two cities. Honestly, about 10 years ago, I would have thought that Lethbridge was the much better city. People that live in Edmonton and Calgary can tend to ignore Red Deer. You only pretty much drive through it as you're traveling between the two cities. And a lot of Edmontonians and Calgarians haven't really explored Red Deer at all. And I've always personally loved the Badlands area of Alberta and cities like Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. But over the years, I've gotten to know Red Deer a lot more, and I've really been surprised at how beautiful the city is. And it was an interesting practice for me to make this video and go through this list and sort of try to figure out which city I thought was best. And Alberta is the fastest growing province in the country right now. And of course, not everyone moving to Alberta wants to live in Edmonton or Calgary. And so a lot of people are looking at some of the smaller cities as a place to live. And with Red Deer and Lethbridge being the next largest cities in the province, a lot of people are considering moving to those places. And I'm hoping that if you're looking at moving to either Red Deer or Lethbridge, that this helped you out somehow. And if you're interested in watching more of my content in general, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload about 1 new video per week, and I'm very new to this whole video production thing, so this really helps me out. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.